Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. We are live on WION World is One. Time now for Pulse. I'm Eric Njoka. Let's begin with the headlines. President Trump announces that he is sending White House border czar Tom Homan to Minnesota in the wake of the second fatal shooting of a protester in Minneapolis. A Russian plane takes off from an airport in northeastern Syria as Moscow is withdrawing forces from there, moving to end its military presence in a corner of the country where the Damascus government is trying to seize control from Kurdish forces. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addresses the Israeli parliament confirming the retrieval of the last slain Israeli hostage, Ran Givli. Says there are no more hostages in Gaza. NATO chief Mark Rutte says Europe cannot defend itself without the United States in the face of calls for the continent to stand on its own feet after tensions over Greenland. In an exclusive interview to Z Network, former Prime Minister of Bangladesh Sheikh Hasina says her priority will be restoration of constitutional governance and the rule of law once she is back in the country. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman has become the latest Conservative Member of Parliament to defect to Reform UK. She becomes the third sitting Tory Member of Parliament to join Nigel Farage's party in the last 11 days and takes Reform's tally of Members of Parliament to 8. Gunmen opened fire at a football match in central Mexico, killing at least 11 people and wounding 12 others in the latest outburst of violence in Mexico's Guanajuato state.
The United States is gripped by a deadly winter storm. At least 10 people have died. Nearly 1 million are without power. More than 20 U.S. states, including Washington, D.C., have declared emergencies as snow, ice, and bitter Arctic cold sweep from the south to the northeast. Authorities are warning to stay off the roads. These are the scenes across America: streets blanketed in snow, cars stranded on icy roads, power lines collapsing under heavy ice. Snow, sleet, and freezing rain have slammed large parts of the country, triggering mass flight cancellations and widespread blackouts. The storm has turned deadly. In New York City, 5 people were found dead outdoors during sub-zero temperatures. The storm has turned deadly. In Texas, 3 people were killed, including a 16-year-old girl, in a sledding accident. Meanwhile, Louisiana confirmed 2 deaths from hypothermia, marking the first storm-related fatalities. Power outages are compounding the crisis. More than 800,000 homes and businesses remain without electricity, mostly across the South. Tennessee, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Georgia are among the worst hit. These are the states which are less accustomed to extreme winter weather. Travel has come to a grinding halt. Major airports in New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. canceled thousands of flights. Federal offices in the U.S. Capitol were closed as snow and sleet blanketed the region. Authorities are urging people to stay indoors unless travel is absolutely necessary. Meteorologists say the storm is fueled by a stretched polar vortex, sending Arctic air deep into North America. Forecasters warn the worst may not be over, with wind chills expected to drop as low as minus 45 degrees Celsius in parts of the country.
Όπως βλέπετε, η δυσκοτοβιομηχανία που είναι πολύ γνωστή έχει αρπάξει φωτιά από τις 4 το απόγευμα. Βρισκόμαστε έξω από τα Τρίκαλα. Δεν ξέρω αν μας έχει αέρα ή όχι. Όχι τώρα.
Always for joining us. It's a pleasure to get your insight on these issues. We move on now, and according to reports, at least 11 people were killed and 12 others were wounded in an armed attack that took place at a soccer field in the central Mexican state of Guanajuato. The attack occurred during a busy time, leaving many in the community devastated by the loss of life and the injury sustained. The incident took place in a region located in the central part of the Mexican state of Guanajuato, known as Salamanca. In response to the attack, officials have confirmed that an operation has been launched to track down those responsible for the assault, and authorities are working around the clock to gather information and to carry out the necessary actions to bring the perpetrators to justice. Let's cut over to the United States next, and a massive winter storm bringing heavy snow and ice crippled in the eastern and
January is a significant day in the Australian calendar. It's a public holiday across the country, and the day is celebrated as Australia's National Day. Most Australians celebrate with fireworks, picnics and parades. But these aren't the only marches you see in Australia on the 26th of January. A large section of the society does not mark it as National Day. They call it Invasion Day instead. Now remember, Australia used to be a British colony, and 26th of January is celebrated as Australia's National Day because that's the day the British arrived there. The first fleet of 11 British ships arrived at Sydney Cove on the 26th of January in 1788, and this fleet carried both British colonizers as well as convicts. The UK had decided to make Australia a prison colony with no regard for the people already living there. The people, who are also known as Aboriginal Australians or the First Nations people. The British colonizers proceeded to kill most of the indigenous Australians and take over the entire continent. Today, Aboriginal Australians make up less than 4% of this population. The number less than 1 million, according to the last census in 2021. And for them, 26th of January is the day the British colonizers came and began conquering their homeland, which is why they call it Invasion Day.
All we ever really wanted as Indigenous people were for people to acknowledge the fact that genocide actually still happened. Ships still came to Sydney and decided to kill so many of our people, and continue traveling around Australia and kill more people.
The Invasion Day commemorations have taken place for years, but this year a different protest was seen in Sydney. Hundreds of Australians marched to protest against immigration. They waved Australian flags, chanted the national anthem, and without a shred of irony, the descendants of British colonizers held up posters saying, "End mass immigration now."
All right, so this is a developing story, and the U.S. military says that the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group has already arrived in West Asia. This dramatically boosts American firepower in that region. The carrier and its accompanying ships have been ordered to the region as Iran cracked down on mass protests. While President Donald Trump has since backed away from military action against Iran, he has insisted all options remain on the table. The protests in Iran started in late December last year, driven by economic grievances, but turned into a mass movement against the Islamic Republic, with huge street demonstrations for several days from January 8th. In a social media post, U.S. Central Command, which is responsible for American forces in that region, said, and I quote, "The strike group is currently deployed to West Asia to promote regional security and stability." Let's talk to our correspondent, Susan Teherani, who's now joining us live on the broadcast from New York. Susan Teherani, good to see you. What does this indicate now that USS Abraham Lincoln is in the Gulf?
So, Eric, while it doesn't indicate an imminent attack by the United States, it does signal visibility and presence in the region, which is very important, not only for the United States, but for its allies as well. This strike group is also accompanied by a number of long-range missiles and has been deployed as a precautionary measure, according to the White House. Now, it's also important to note that as this strike group takes its position, we are hearing that the United Arab Emirates has issued a statement saying that it will not allow its land or sea be used by the United States for any kind of military attack against Iran. So tensions are high between the United States and Iran. And this strike group, many observers have been following it, coming all the way from its base to the Indian Ocean and ultimately to the Middle East. And there is this anticipation that some kind of military confrontation may happen with Iran. But again, it's not an indication of that. The visibility, I think, is more important for Washington than anything else right now.
All right, Susan Teherani, let's see what pans out of this, because there is already alarm bells in the Gulf. There is already alarm bells in the United States and Iran. Let's see what turns out of this. Susan, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you. And joining us live from Casablanca, Morocco, is Mr. Hafid Botaleb. He's a geopolitics and international relations analyst at the AOB Group. Mr. Botaleb, thank you very much for your time and welcome to the broadcast. Do you foresee
Thank you for the invitation.
Do you foresee a war between Iran and the United States? Very quickly.
Well, so far it seems that it might happen, not a war intends ground intervention. I'm quite sure Americans will not go for ground intervention. However, supplying weapons to the opposition, targeting the Revolution Guard barracks and headquarters, weakening all the defense system of Iran that has already been dramatically weakened since 2025. This might be reasonable targets for Americans in the region. And this massive armada that has been carried in the Arab-Persian Sea or Arab-Persian Gulf is a normal reaction after the threats formulated from Tehran. And this is a totally normal reaction on behalf of America, of the United States. And so far, regarding the magnitude of the repression, unprecedented since 1979, plus these threats from the high command of the Islamic Republic, or so-called Islamic Republic, has led to this escalation. So the first responsible to this escalation by the United States are the the leaders of the Islamic Republic, who constantly, instead of addressing the real reasons behind this upheaval, constantly are pointing out a foreign intervention. It might happen, but it might be on the ground. However, this is not the sole, or even cannot explain the magnitude of this unprecedented upheaval, and it is the daily hardships that every Iranian face every day, this collapse of the currency, collapse of standards of living in Iran, despite being an oil exporting country, that explain this social then becoming political unrest.
Mr. Botaleb, let me ask you this. Iran continues to issue threats to the United States. It has actually threatened President Trump, saying that if you attack us, then that means it's a war. Do you actually think that President Trump will ignore these warnings and strike Iran?
Well, I think that President Trump has other channels instead of just those that we see to deal with the high command in Iran, and they might be contacts, of course. But what is sure is that these threats are formulated first and foremost to domestic people, to the people of Iran demonstrating every day. These threats are intent to make this situation even bigger, give it a more sensational thanks in order to justify the repression, the domestic repression carried out by the regime. But what is sure is that Donald Trump will act for the interest of the region, for the interest of the United States. There will be some attacks, even if Iran.
What interest is that, Mr. Botaleb? What interest is that the United States will be fighting for? I just want to understand that.
The interest is not having a regime that is killing dozens of thousands or thousands of people after half century in charge just to sustain itself. And in that, it is a considerable threat to the whole region. The regime is unable to conduct reform. What people demand on the street are basically reforms. Before calling for a regime change in itself, what people demand massively, it's reforms. Today in Iran, the leaders are unable to conduct reforms. And that's why I want to add to you, if I have a couple of minutes, I want to add that these threats are also formulated against the reformist wing within the Iranian regime. There is a reformist wing today that has been marginalized, and most of leaders like Mohammad Khatami or Mir Hossein Mossavi are today under house arrest. So by making things or beginning things or making things more dramatic, of course, it is the fate of Iran that would be discussed instead of the fate of the regime itself. If it remains a confrontation between people and the regime is in high danger, even from its moderate wing. Even the moderate wing can move and support the street. However, if it goes national, if it goes even civilizational, this gives more argument for the regime to sustain itself and to carry on repression in the name of the nation, not in the name of its own mere survival.
All right, Mr. Botaleb, it's good to see you. Thank you for talking to us today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
The naval forces in the Yemeni armed forces, and with the help of God, targeted the British oil ship Marlon Luanda in the Gulf of Aden with a number of suitable naval missiles. The hit was direct, which led to its burning by God's grace.
The Marlon Luanda was in the middle of the ship from where it took off. and the Mujahideen did not know where it was going. After the ship broke the siege which the Yemeni armed forces imposed on the British, American, and Syrian ships. Although this was directed at us, it was a military entity from the beginning, targeting any ship that broke the siege. However, we deliberately targeted it in the Gulf of Aden to deliver a message to the enemy that we are ready to strike any target in any part of the region that is present or not. After determining the appropriate place in which the ship will be targeted, the Yemeni missile forces launched the Red Sea missiles towards the ship Marlin Luanda. The hit was, by God's grace, smart, where the ship was hit in the middle of it, and the fire ignited immediately. After the fire ignited and the flames spread on the target ship's surface, 3 warships of various nationalities, American, French, and Indian, started to extinguish the fire of the ship and extinguished it. The fire lasted for more than 19 hours.
The naval forces in the Yemeni armed forces, and with the help of God, targeted the British oil ship Marlin Luanda in the Gulf of Aden with a number of suitable naval missiles. The hit was direct, which led to its burning, by God's grace.
The British should learn from the ship that burned from night to night. It remained close. And he will take the harm himself and his economy without a result, without achieving the goal of protecting the Israeli ships.
Everyone, myself is Captain Avilash Rao, a master of Marlin Luanda. Half of the world knows that yesterday we was struck by a missile in Gulf of Aden. Due to this missile attack, the vessel was on fire, and it was not a small fire, it was a huge fire. It's a loaded tanker, and I hope people know that what happens if a tanker goes on fire, a loaded tank. So I really thank the Indian warship INS Vishakhapatnam